Welcome to historic Cohoes, New York. It was once known as the Spindle City because of its importance in the textile manufacturing industry. We're at the confluence of the Mohawk and the Hudson Rivers, just at the base of the majestic Cohoes Falls, but we're here looking for birds. Welcome to another Birdcast. Whether you're looking for them or not, birds are all around us, a constant presence in the air, land, and sea. How do you make sense of it all? Well, that's where we come in. Every week we scour the globe to bring this world to you, from the farthest reaches of nature all the way to your own backyard. And whether you're an experienced birder or stepping into this world for the first time, things are about to take off on Birdcast Coast to Coast. Welcome to another edition of the Birdcast. I'm Jason Goff along with Rich Guthrie. And as I mentioned, we're in downtown Cohoes, maybe not the first place you would think about when you're looking for birds, Rich, but we've already seen 3 bald eagles, a flock of geese, and some egrets. What else are we looking for out here today?
Well, this is a wonderful spot to find migrating shorebirds such as sandpipers and plovers, and as well as herons and egrets and geese and the gulls, and who knows what else will be drawn in here. It's a wonderful habitat for migrating birds. It's all about the food. And what we have here is an opportunity for these birds to find a place to rest, to fuel up, and then wait a few days and then head on their way south, some of them going as far as South America.
So they'll start their migrations, in essence, from here over the next few weeks as we get deeper into September.
Yeah, actually, some of these guys are coming down from the Arctic Ocean, the shores of the Arctic. They're on their way through. This is just a stopover for them, and they remember it year after year. The young ones learn from the adults, and they stop in here, spend a few hours, a few days, and then move on.
So they'll adjust with the rising and lowering of the water here off of the falls, do their thing, and off they go.
Yes, indeed.
Well, we're going to continue to look around for birds, and I'm sure that we'll have good luck in doing that as we have some folks out here already doing the very same. But first, since we last saw you in July, we want to catch you up on a couple of other birds that some folks have been seeing across the countries in our Bird Watchers Coast to Coast segment. We always like to catch you up to some unusual bird sightings around here on the Birdcast. So we have our top 5 from around the country. The first of which is the common crane coming over from Asia, but we found him with the sandhill crane in California and Arizona and a few other western states, Rich.
Yeah, they have a habit of turning up in various places. They follow a crowd of sandhill cranes across the Bering Sea and show up with the crowd. There's a couple of them that are out there and maybe a few more that are going unnoticed in the crowd.
And then as we stick a little bit closer to home in North America, the barrel-line hummingbird making its way up from Mexico.
Yeah, the barrel-line hummingbird is part of this crowd of southern hummingbirds that wander into Arizona and New Mexico and turn around and head back south again.
And then as we head on to the other side of the country, making our way into Florida, the thick-billed vireo.
The thick-billed vireo, this one is interesting. It's a Cuban bird species that shows up on southern Florida every now and then. And this one is interesting because it looks like a young bird that just came out of the nest this year. And off he's off, wandering around Florida.
Well, if it's not good enough for Florida, then we'll make our way all the way diagonally across the country to Alaska, making our way up there for the slaty-backed gull.
The slaty-backed gull is a bird typically of Japan, Kamchatka, Korea, that shows up on the west coast, Alaska, down through California. And what's interesting, some of them even come as far as New York and Wisconsin.
And what might get them to make their way that far to the east?
They just keep on going. They get caught up in a crowd of gulls, and they're looking for food. And the herring gulls know where the food is, and the slaty-backed gull follows them right along.
That's cool. And our last of the 5 is the eared quetzal.
Yeah, the eared quetzal is another Mexican bird species that making some inroads into southern Arizona. Seems to be a species that may be colonizing the southern states.
So you think they may be coming to hang out for a little while?
They may be here. Yeah, they may actually turn up nesting in southern as well.
No kidding. And we'll talk, perhaps going forward in some of our episodes here, we'll talk a little bit about the influence of climate change on birds, because certainly that might have something to do with some of their nesting changes.
Yes, and in the bird world, there's a lot of change going on. It's happening all the time. Some forward advances and some retreats.
Well, we have two runners up too, because we don't want to leave anybody out. The sharp-tailed sandpiper found in the upper Midwest in Wisconsin.
Yeah, the sharp-tailed sandpiper is another Asian species, nests in Siberia, usually winters as far down as Australia. They too wander across the Bering Sea and will show up again as far as the East Coast from Massachusetts to New Jersey and New York as well.
Wow. And then speaking of that, in between, the Trinidad petrel found in North Carolina this time.
That was offshore. This is an ocean bird species that nests off the coast of Brazil. And they wander out the wide open oceans. And this one happened to turn up in front of a boatload of bird watchers out of North Carolina. A wonderful event.
I'll bet that is the fact, just to be able to come across that. And it's interesting too that obviously weather systems can impart birds, put them in different spots. So with that, we're going to head to some news stories that have made their way through here since we last left you. Top of which, of course, Hurricane Laura making landfall in southwestern Louisiana. So, Rich, we're going to talk a little bit about some news stories in the birding world, and of course that intersects with a lot of different things. But the sharp-tailed sandpiper that made its way up into Wisconsin, what might drive a bird to head that far north out of its normal habitat?
Well, some birds have a tendency to wander off the path, and they get caught up with the wrong crowd. They follow that crowd to the wrong place, they find some food. They're happy to be there. They'll turn around and go back home again when the time is right.
And are they always able to do that, to turn around and go home in that sense?
Not always. And this is how birds colonize new areas. This is why we end up with European birds nesting in North America and Asian birds nesting in Alaska. It happens every now and then. Most of the time, it just kind of ends right there.
I see. And then there are other factors at play, namely weather, which is more in my wheelhouse in terms of, in a manner of speaking, sort of artificially driving birds out. So we had a hurricane that made landfall in southwestern Louisiana. It was the fifth strongest storm ever to hit the United States. And the track of this, and I want to get your thoughts on this, the track of this storm came to the south of Cuba, right up through the Gulf of Mexico to make landfall up into the Tennessee Valley and took a hard right. So that has the opportunity to sweep up, for lack of a better way to put it, a lot of birds from the Caribbean all the way up into the middle of the United States.
And there's a lot of room in between for those birds to get out of the storm and move back to where they belong. And many of them will settle down and wait for the storm to blow over. These birds put up with this all the time. Ocean birds deal with storms all the time. They just find a place out of the way and settle down. The birds that do get caught up with it will end up in a strange environment. We get seabirds in farm fields, and we get tropical birds in the city, and we get all sorts of odd showings of the birds. These birds are in for a hard time. They're out of their element, and if they don't find their way back to the ocean, it's going to be tough for them.
Understood. So, and anecdotally, and it's been shown that sometimes birds will actually get caught up in the eyes of these storms, and they can't get out.
They can't get out until that eye begins to dissipate, and then things settle down. As the storm diminishes in strength, the birds may have a chance to get out through the window.
And ultimately, that's how they end up where they end up. So you might, for example, have a bird from Puerto Rico that could end up in Arkansas.
No question about it, and it happens quite often. Most of the time they go by unnoticed, and it's a matter of people being aware of the possibility, looking for the opportunity, and finding and know what they're finding.
Well, we'll see how the rest of the hurricane season goes, and we'll see if we get some more bird sightings for our next episodes and see how we might be able to tie that in. But moving on, there was a great piece in the New York Times about the flight of the swift. And it was an interesting article because it sort of juxtaposed the author with the mentality of the bird. Tell me a little bit about the swift.
Well, the swift is appropriately named. It's a small aerial insect-eating bird. They spend most of their time, in fact, some say all of their life, except for nesting, in the air. And these birds that we have around here, the chimney swift, nests in chimneys. They used to nest in hollow trees. We came along, built chimneys, they nested in the chimneys. They migrate out of here all the way down to Central South America, Peru, Ecuador, Brazil, the Amazon basin.
Wow.
They turn around and come back up again in the spring. Wonderful little birds, and they fly with stiff little wings. They have a distinctive flight. The swift is a magnificent aerial bird.
Well, and that's a heck of a lot of energy that it's expending, so it's got to eat quite a bit as well.
All the time. It's all about food. They got to keep that energy going. Every now and then they'll find a nice chimney to roost in, to rest in. The old factory chimneys that we have around many times serve as an overnight rest stop for the chimney swifts in North America.
And you saw a couple of camera hogs behind us, a flock of geese making their way a little bit farther to the north, but they're moving on and looks like they're having a good time out there as well. The last piece, and we've seen this before now, since drones have come onto the scene over the last few years and they've become more sophisticated and easier to navigate. Look at these guys, and here they come in just to hang out. Splash down. It looks to be about, what do you think, Rich, about 30 or 35?
Yeah, I'd say 30, 35, up to 50 of them, but scattered around. They're probably a little upset by the two eagles that have been hanging out here.
Yeah, we had, as we were going to start the production of this, there were two gorgeous eagles that were sitting up and then a juvenile on the other side. So the geese seem a little bit agitated, as Rich said, but they'll get over it. They've got plenty of time yet before the real cold weather sets in. Speaking of eagles, and as we were talking before about the drones as well, as they've come onto the scene, they've become a lot more easily maneuverable, and more and more people are getting into those. And as a result, we've seen raptors attacking these drones, which you can see with the camera on those things. So with this eagle attacking it, if you're an eagle, what is it that you're thinking about that you just want to get this drone out of your hood?
Well, it's not only the eagle, but the hawks and other birds will go after a drone because they see an intruder getting too close to their comfort zone. And the comfort zone may be driven by either a nest or food or perhaps just intrusion into their territory. And so they'll go out there and try to drive it out. If that doesn't work, then it's all hands get on them.
And that's when they'll just come right into these things, and usually it's the drone that loses.
Absolutely. I mean, when it comes to maneuverability, they may be fast and they may be adroit, but the eagle, they mean business and they take charge.
And it's just a matter of size too. Physics always wins, and the eagles are certainly a little bit heavier than those drones, and they can just knock them out of the way.
And I think an eagle knows what they're doing.
As this is our third episode of Birdcast Coast to Coast, we have a good pal up in Maine who has been chronicling his adventures, we'll call it, in backyard birding. Our photojournalist David Hewitt takes a look back at the summer of 2020.
Now that we're well into the summer, I just wanted to look back at that special moment, the beginning of summer. It is a beautiful time of year. The sugar snap peas are climbing the trestle, cottage roses are in bloom, the poppies are starting to open, the daylilies are actually smiling. And if you look around the yard, you'll notice the doe at the bottom of the wooded meadow, a garter snake up against the foundation, and the eastern painted turtle laying her eggs on the edge of the lawn. All is good here on Linscott Road. And things got a little bit better this summer with a few simple birding additions. We're actually not backyard birders, we're front yard birders. And yes, we have our traditional bird feeder with sunflower seeds that attracts the likes of goldfinches and many other birds. But this summer we added 3 simple things. The first is this log. We decided to ditch the traditional suet cakes and try something new. I drilled some holes in it and then some smaller holes to put sticks in as perches. My recipe for filling it is quite easy. First, I grind up some peanuts, then throw a hefty amount of peanut butter in a container, mix in the peanuts, then mix in some wild bird food and throw it in the fridge. Once you stuff the log full, the results are amazing. Everybody seems to enjoy it. From the variety of woodpeckers, the red-bellied being my favorite with its gleaming cap, the grackle with its wild eyes, the chipping sparrow, the red-winged blackbird with its feisty attitude, and the bluebird who seems to use it more as a perch for hunting insects. Speaking of bluebirds, our next addition was a bluebird house, which took a little effort, but not much. We used a stovepipe halfway up a 6 to 7 foot pole. It helps keep the critters away. We bought a bluebird-specific house with no perch or paint on it, and a hole that's just the right size. It faces east and is on the edge of a small field. The bluebirds moved into it the second season it was up. And this couple has been very busy and had 2 broods by the middle of July. They're just fascinating to watch. The third and final addition is very simple. We cut an orange in half, put it on a stump, and voila, Baltimore Orioles come. And they are a sight to be seen. As they say, it's the little things in life. Watching all these birds just strikes an inner chord and seems to keep a smile on all of our faces.
So if you've been following us here on Birdcast Coast to Coast, you know that birds, of course, are everywhere. Of course, weather has a big factor in all of that as well, but Rich and I have seen quite a few birds around here today. Of course, you saw the geese that flew behind us when we were talking before about some of our news segments. We've seen a lot of gulls around out here today, some plovers, sandpipers. But yesterday we also had a fair amount of rain that came through, so that tended to kind of scoot those plovers and sandpipers out. But Rich, there are also some benefits to rains that'll come on through.
Yeah, sure. They'll replenish the food supply. They'll bring some food down from upriver, deposit it in these pools down here, and that's what these birds are waiting for, their next meal to be served up.
So the bottom line is this: you can go birding anytime you want. Just keep an eye on the weather, and that might give you a little bit of an indication of what you might expect to see here in Cohoes or anywhere else. That does it for this episode of the Birdcast. We're looking forward next time to be making our way up to Vergennes, Vermont, right up Route 7 in that part of the state. So we're looking forward to having you join us at that time as we'll be getting into fall. Until then, take care. Welcome. Let me cut that away.